All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. A couple things. First, I'm going over the first two parts of the AngularJS, JavaScript, and jQuery all-in-one Sam's Teach Yourself by Daily and Daily. I've completed the first 6 chapters, and now I'd like to start going through chapters 7 through 11. All right, and the goal is to have that stuff out there for the beginning of class on January 25th. You may notice that it looks a little bit different than it has in the past. CourseSmart, which I've been using for a long time, has become VitalSource. So this is how my stuff is going to be shown now. I don't know if it'll be better or if it'll be worse. If nothing else, it'll be interesting. All right. So as we start up on Chapter 7, beginning of Part 2, accessing DOM elements, as it says there, using JavaScript and jQuery objects. So our objectives to identify the differences between jQuery and JavaScript DOM objects, how to tell if an object is jQuery or DOM, how to get a jQuery object from a DOM object, how to get a DOM object from a jQuery object. And finally, how to use Jquery Selectors to quickly find DOM objects. All right. As they mention here, the most important part of a dynamic web is to be able to access DOM elements. Remember, the DOM is the document object model. And the more expert you are with the DOM, the better you are at programming websites, especially dynamic websites. JavaScript, as it says there, inherently provides functionality to access DOM elements. At times, though, you might want to use jQuery instead of using standard JavaScript. So, what they're going to talk about, as it says there in the following sections, you will learn the basic structure of jQuery and JavaScript DOM objects. I don't want to sit and read to you. All right? No any more than you probably want me to sit here and read to you. So, they mention there we need to understand the difference between these types of objects. So DOM objects are explained there near the top of your screen. It says they're objects that the web browser is using to render elements on a web page. All right. The advantage of working with DOM objects is you have access to everything. All right. That's also one of the disadvantages, as we'll see just a little bit. All right, so the table that you see here, and I can show you most of it, I guess, maybe just about all of it. No, close to it. As they say, these are some of the more commonly used attributes and methods attached to DOM objects. We're going to look at some of these, and what I'm going to do is take some time to go over the actual code examples that are in the book and probably supplement them or add some of my own to them. So we're going to look at a lot of this stuff, and some of this you're already familiar with. You know IDs, you know classes and styles, and you may have worked with a click routine. You may have even done some work already with nodes. All right? Which are kind of the hallmark of working with DOM objects. jQuery objects, on the other hand, notice what it says, because that's the key thing, is that first sentence. They're basically wrapper objects around DOM elements. So some of the names are going to be similar, all right? Some of them, again, will be a little bit different. And you'll notice with basically everything that's here, just about, you get brackets around different things. So we're going to take a look at a lot of this stuff that's in here. All right? All right. So notice, if you want to see if an object is a jQuery object, you can say if the name of the object .jQuery. If you want to see if it's a DOM object, you can say if the object name .node type. And also, it's possible to go back and forth between jQuery objects, all right, and DOM objects. And again, why would you want to do that? Well, I've given examples before in the past of, for example, where people might want to take a string and break it into an array. So, and the reason for that is so that they can use some of the array methods that aren't available on strings, or vice versa. You might want to take an array and concatenate everything together. This is like the explode versus implode that we talked about, for example, those of you who've had the PHP class already. All right, accessing DOM objects from JavaScript. Well, some of this stuff we've talked about already, and I do want to make sure, I'm going to go through a very simple example here. Sorry. All right, then, continuing on. Talking about accessing DOM objects from JavaScript. And what I had mentioned to you that, and this will be review for people watching this who've already had a class like PHP, and it will be something new for the rest of you, okay? But if I come through here and I start to create, I'm just going to start to rough up a little a web page here, and it won't have very much in it. I'm not going to put meta tags and everything else in it. All right, so let's just say that I put a paragraph in here. Now let's make it real simple. An H1 tag. All right, and I'm going to say, this is my test page. All right, you've seen all this kind of stuff already. So I'm going to save this, and I'll save it to the desktop, and I'm just going to call it index.html. All right. And if I go and I run this in Chrome, let's say, be an H1 tag, this is my test page, and there'll be nothing else in it. There it is. Good. All right. Now, let's say I do come in here, and normally I'd put this stuff, in fact I will, put this in a separate page, but let's put an ID in here. And we'll call it, it's kind of a stupid name, but big and red. All right. And I'm going to say font size 48 point, color red. Just leave it like that. All right, so it's big and red, and we'll call that one test.css. Okay. All right, now I'm going to come in here. And in here, I'm going to put a link tag in, rel equals style sheet, href equals test.css. All right, and now I'm going to add to this particular thing right here, the ID, and have that ID be equal to big and red. This should be case insensitive, but you get the idea. All right, so save everything. Let's see if that worked. All right, it's 48 points. Cool. All right. Now, I'm going to come in here and very quickly rough up a form. Hopefully you'll see why in just a second. But method equal post action equal, we'll just keep it on the page it's on. All right, and I'll put just a few fields in here. And we'll put another one in here that's got last name. I'm just going to keep it real simple. Okay, so we've got first name, we've got last name, now remember, there's virtually no CSS set up with the form, so if it doesn't look very good, hey, I'm sorry in advance. Okay, there's my form. Okay, again, not perfect. I could do different things to make it look better. The only one that I will do, because I don't like one thing about it right now, and that is I'm going to add yet another BR tag there. All right, refresh. That's a little bit better. Now that's not too bad. All right, but what I want to show you is this. You use IDs on these things. You use IDs so that anything that you give an ID to is available in JavaScript. You use the name attribute, and you use that in a server-side language such as PHP. All right? So if I do want to come in here and I want to write some JavaScript, all right, and I'm not going to do anything right now other than just this script. But I could come in here and I could say var fname equals get element by ID first name. All right, and why am I showing you that? Well, the reason that I'm showing you that, and I can put document in here. I don't know if it'll matter if I put document in there or not. All right, but the point is, what that's doing is it's going through my code up above and it's looking for something with an ID of first name. And when it looks, it'll find it right here. All right, so that is one way that you can find different objects that are in the document object model. All right, let's say that I also come in here and I don't even know if they show this in the book or not, so yes they do. All right, so I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to add a couple paragraphs. No, I didn't. Well, that's fine. This is my first paragraph. This is my second paragraph. And you can see as we're coming through here, we're adding more and more stuff. Let's even put an extra BR tag in there. And we'll even put another one here. All right, so you can see what I'm starting to do, even though it's crude, is I'm starting to develop a web page. All right, and that should make sense to everyone. Now, if I want to, if you notice, if you take a look in here, all right, I've got two paragraphs. Okay, so if I wanted to come in here and make another variable, var paras for paragraphs equal, I could say this, documents, document.get elements, now it's plural, by tag name p. All right, so that's a way I could refer to all of my paragraphs. So let's say that I came in here and in this paragraph I'm going to add a class. And I'm going to say class equals, this is going to, since I have big and red, let's say I have little and blue. All right, and we will add little and blue to right here. So this will be little and blue. And we'll make this 10 point, and we'll just say blue here. Now we're saving. All right, we're going to come back to our web page and refresh, and you notice the change. Hopefully you're going to notice the change. Oh, we didn't notice the change. All right, so let's see what happened. little in blue. I didn't save this. That would probably help. All right, now, still hasn't changed anything. Okay. P class equal little and blue. Well, there's the class name, little and blue. And there's little and blue. Oh, I made it an ID. There we go. All right, now we got a class. Now let's, there you go. So you see it's smaller and it's also blue. All right. Well, remember one thing, you can only have one unique ID per page. Not just one ID, but one ID. Every ID on a page must be unique. But where I've got here class equals this, if I wanted to, I could come in and, for instance, for this second label, I could say label for equals, and then let's say the input, the text box here. I could add this if I did want to. In fact, I don't want to put it there. Let's put in a button. All right. Input type equal submit. Value equal submit. And even though I wouldn't normally do this with a button, let's put a class in there for it also. And we'll say submit. All right, so let's look at that now. See if we've changed anything or if I screwed something up. Well, notice I've got now the button, and the button's blue. I don't know why I put the word submit there afterwards. I shouldn't have, but you get the idea. All right, so let's fix that up. Let's get rid of this. Won't even need that. But let's put a couple of, let's put about 3 line breaks here. All right. All right, it's looking fine. What I'm trying to get across from you in this is when I want to come in and actually start writing some code here, I can use document.getElementById, and I can grab any DOM element that's on the page. All right, as long as I've given it an ID, I can grab it with getElement, and you notice that that's singular. It's a single element. If I've got multiple elements, it doesn't matter. I can't have only one or even none. But here what I'm saying is get elements, because it's possible that I could have several. I could have several p tags on the page. But now I can also come in and say var, what do we call that? Little and blue, LAB for little and blue, equals document dot get elements by class name. And now I can put in the name of the class. Little and blue. All right. So what I'm trying to show you is this is a way that I can reference different things that are in here by either an ID or by the tag or by a class name. And those are the ones that are used most often in here. All right. So there's a try it yourself, and it's kind of a silly example, but let's go over it because there's some code in it, and it's probably worth spending at least a little bit of time on some of these. And I don't know if I have this saved here or not saved here. Come on. Source code. Yes, this is it. So I'm on Chapter 7, and I want to open up DOM objects HTML right here. All right, and let's see. Hello world. All right, and as you can see, what it did was it came in here and it put in a couple headers that said hello world. Now that's not that big a thing, but let's take a look at what's in the book, and then let's take a look at the associated source code. All right? So as it says, in this example, you use JavaScript to find different elements and read values and write values to them. This is a basic example designed to give you a chance to use JavaScript in accessing DOM objects. All right, the full scripts are in listing 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3. All right. So that's all on page 204. So we'll look at that in just a minute. So they want us to create, let's just take a look at the code first of all. Oops. I think I still may be doing it. Didn't I put that in here? Index test. No. Alrighty. We'll open this and we'll use, let's use Internet Explorer. Not because I like Explorer, because I don't, but I've already got stuff open up in both Firefox and in Chrome. Okay? So right now, if we take a look at this, this is our file. So there's not really a whole heck of a lot in it. And you should be able to understand every single thing that's in here. I should no longer have to explain what a doc type tag is. You should understand everything that's here in gray. I guess the first 5 lines. You should understand all of that. You should understand how to add a script tag. So we're going to look in just a minute at the script that's under the JS folder called domobjects.js. We'll also take a quick look at the cascading style sheet that's under the CSS folder, domobjects.js and domobjects.css. All right? So what do we have in here? We've got an input, a text field that's called text in, and we've got a button. When you click the button, it's supposed to call the text change event, which is defined inside of this file. All right, its value is update. And notice we've got a span here with a class of heading and a p, id equal 1, so it's a blank paragraph, and another heading and another blank paragraph. So right now, this stuff that's right here, there isn't anything that's going to display on the screen until we actually click that button. So let's take a look at what happens when we click that button. All right, make it a little bigger. All right, so we've got a function here called text change. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to look for an element that's called text in. All right, and what's that element? That element called text in is that text box that we put in there. All right, so find that element that's called text in. All right, and we will refer to it in our code as in element. Then find any possible elements that have a paragraph tag associated with them. So we look in here, and there's a paragraph tag, and there's a paragraph tag. So this right here is going to be called in element, and this right here, combined with this right here, all right, those two are going to be called out elements. All right, so that's the first thing. All right, then we also want to come in and we want to go and find a class that's named heading. All right, now sometimes I do this, what I'm about to do, it might drive you nuts and you might think I'm stupid or whatever, but I like to take stuff like that at least sometimes and line it all up so I can see exactly what I'm working with. So I've got a thing called heading elements, and I want to find something with a class that's got heading. Again, there could be none of them, one of them, or more of them. So what in here is a class heading? This does, that span. This does, that span. Okay, good. So now I've identified, so I could come in here if I wanted to, And I could say, okay, this text in is input element. All right. These P's that you see right here, this P is output elements, that one right there, and that one right there. All right. And then finally, the class name heading, that's heading elements. All right, so now I've sort of identified everything by putting a comment in the line up above it to say what's what. All right, so now I come in here and I'm writing a for loop. Again, I'm going to pretty it up a little bit. For I equals 0, I less than out elements, which are my paragraph, dot length. All right, I'm creating another local variable here that's called out item. And out item is going to be equal to the current out element sub I, or the current paragraph. All right, so I'm saying grab the current paragraph. And inside of my heading, which is in that span, I want to say updating to, and that's going to be whatever I ended up writing inside of the text box. So in English, this is saying what I want to do is I want to grab whatever value I put inside of the text box, and I want this heading element, which currently has nothing in it. It's that span and it's that span. All right, so there's nothing there and there's nothing there. But what I'm saying is I want you to grab whatever I key in there, that inner HTML, and I want you to assign it to, all right, for the heading, I want you to assign it to updating to this. And then my out item, I want it to say whatever I put in there into the in element, into the text in value. Now, probably confused you more than helped you, so let's run it one more time. Oh, not that one though. All right, so let's refresh it. There it is. This is a test. Click update. So notice it says updating 1 to this is a test. Then you've got this is a test. Updating 2 to this is a test, and this is a test. So let's take this, keep that up here, shrink it down as much as we can so we can still see it, but take a look and go over what's happening here as opposed to what's happening there. All right, so we'll clear the screen. In elements equals text in. That's whatever we put in here. So I'm going to put my name in there, Jeffrey Paul Scott. Now, in element now holds Jeffrey Paul Scott. Out element, all right, and out elements are the paragraphs. There's nothing in them yet because we haven't told those to change until we get in and actually click that button. So we're going to do that in a second. All right, same thing with heading elements. That's those spans. There's nothing in there yet. All right, so now we're going to say, now start going through this loop. My loop control variable, have it start with 0, and go as long as there are output elements. And remember, those output elements are as long as there are paragraphs. So that's the same thing as saying for I equals 0, I less than 2. All right? Then we created a local variable called out item, and we set that equal to whatever the current paragraph is. So that should say updating, and it's 0 by default, so that should actually say there updating 1, 2, and then whatever value we're putting in here. So this, the first time through, it should say updating 1 to Jeffrey Paul Scott. That's what goes into the paragraph. And what goes into the span is what I typed in there, in element.value. So that should say Jeffrey Paul Scott. Then it runs through it again for the second paragraph, and it says updating 2 to Jeffrey Paul Scott. And it's got that in there for 2. So again, when I say update, you can see exactly what happens. Updating 1 to Jeffrey Paul Scott, updating 2 to Jeffrey Paul Scott. All right? And we are basically setting up all of this code. All right? We're setting up all this code, and we're doing it all dynamically. So the only other thing to look at in here is the associated CSS file. All right, and that just says every paragraph that we put in, we want it to be bold, 50 pixel size, 5 pixel margin, and the color blue. All right, and again, I'm anal about this. I like blank spaces here. You may or may not agree. But notice if I change this from blue to green. All right, to green as an example. And if we come back in and we refresh, and I put in Jeffrey Paul Scott again, it's going to look exactly the same, except that now they're in green. All right. So what we've done is we've used JavaScript to find different elements that are in here. And again, we both read values and wrote values to them. And again, if you look in the book, maybe I should have done that. It might have been a little easier for you. I don't know. But if we look on the next page, here is the HTML code. And here is the JavaScript. So again, in element, text in, that's the text box. All right. Out elements, those are the 2 paragraphs that currently are empty. Heading elements, those are the 2 spans that currently are empty. And we tell it to loop through as long as there are paragraphs. All right. And grab whatever we put in the text box and have it saying updating whatever that paragraph number is plus 1. So instead of paragraph 0 and 1, it's paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. So updating 1 to, if I put my name in there, Jeffrey Paul Scott, and then also fill up what's in that span to the same thing. And you just saw this. There was the associated CSS file. So we're coming to the point where whether you're a first-year student or whether you're a second-year student, you should be able to look through this stuff, and at least ideally, it makes some sense to you as far as what's going on. All right? All right. Jquery Selectors on page 205. Unlike JavaScript, Jquery allows you or enables you to find HTML elements in a lot more ways. Jquery Selectors make it easy to select just about anything. And they give an example in here. And remember, what that would do is that would find anything with an ID of my element. So there are some examples here. This is all stuff, again, you're either going to have to understand now or at least by the time the class is over. All right? because what you're going to be doing in here for most of your homework assignments will be writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that includes jQuery. So these are some of the most common jQuery selectors. Notice the star means select everything. Dot class means, in this case, okay, it would be any class that was called class. Better example is the one down below it, the dot container. That would select any HTML element with a class of container. The pound menu, like they show there, would select any HTML element with an ID of menu. Just the element in there was selected by a tag type. So if I put a P in there where it says element, it would select all paragraphs. All right, they show an example with a div. If I wanted to select multiple elements, I just comma separate them. So the example that you see right here says select all divs, all spans, and all paragraphs. All right. Finally, you can have an element dot class, as it says, selects element of a specific tag and class. So this would say select all unordered list elements that have a class of big list. And that's an error there. That should have been big. Either that should be big list or that should be big lists. You can go further with this stuff, and they show this a little further down on the page here. So this is the bottom of page 206 and some of the stuff that's on 207. You can select HTML elements by their attribute values. So they show the syntax and an example. So if we look right here, this would be an input element, but it would have to have a value of 0. There could be multiple. All right, this says select all elements that in their class name have the word content. As it says, it would grab any of these because they all have content in there. All right. This says select all attributes that begin with something. Remember, the caret there means begin with. So that example that's down below it, as it says, would select all image elements whose source attribute starts with icons followed by a slash. When you put, instead of starting it with a pound, with a caret equal, you start it with a not equals. That literally says, in this case, select all input elements where the value is not, does not equal default text. This one here says select all paragraphs that have an ID attribute. All right. And then finally, select all paragraph elements that have an ID attribute and have a class that is equal to menu. So they have both an ID and a class. There are also content filter selectors, and they show some of these on 208. In fact, the rest of this chapter, 208, 209, 210, and 211, are just going to be filled with example after example after example. Then we'll go through one more code example, and that'll be it for the chapter. All right? So here are some content selectors. I'll let you take a look at those. You'll notice as an example, just some of them just totally make sense. Right here, elements with no content, divs with no content. So these selectors, as they mentioned up above, allow you to select HTML elements based on the content inside of the particular element. There are hierarchy selectors. You've seen some of these before. All right. And I should mention this to you. I have to go look for it, which I don't mind doing at all. But let's see. Don't want to waste anybody's time here, but I'd like you to see this. Last semester, most of you in this class, but not all of you, had me for the JavaScript class. And towards the end of the semester, we went through some jQuery examples. Well, I want to go and grab those from last semester, and I want to copy them over so they're available for the Ajax class and the Design and Implementation Projects class. But what I wanted to mention from here, somewhere in there, and I think it's in the in-class section, but I'm not even sure. Let's see if I can find this. I don't know if these will be them or not, but we'll look. Okay, it's not that one. And it's not that one. What I did was I covered virtually every CSS selector. You'll notice there's 99 slides here. All right, so I'd cover a selector and give a description. Another selector, give a description. And I put some examples in here with them also. What I did, and this is a couple years old, but what I did was I went out to this site right here. Developer.mozilla, their CSS reference, and I went through the stuff that was in here. Did I go through all of them? It doesn't look like it now, at least, because it looks like there's well more than 100. But I went through there, and I went through these selectors, all right, and I grabbed the examples that they put in there, okay? I want you to learn this stuff any way you can. I'd rather deluge you and give you way too much information than not give you enough information. All right, so you notice when you look in here, there's ancestors. You can use the greater than sign. You can use the plus sign. You can use the tilde. This is all different stuff that we're going to be going over. All right, and the best way to learn this is to use it. It's not to come in here and say, well, I'm going to memorize this. Memorizing doesn't mean squat. But if I look right here at this example, div.menu greater than sign span. As it says, select all span elements that have an immediate parent that is a div with a class of menu. So that would mean that that span would have to be inside of a div, and that div would have to have a class of menu. All right? This example right here says select all labels that are immediately followed by an input element with a class of text item. So the greater than sign is preceded, the plus sign is followed by. And we've got the tilde here. That example, as it says, selects all div elements that are siblings of an element with an ID of menu. And they show you some examples of this. Form selectors, this is where some of the most powerful stuff, in my humble opinion, that you have available to you in jQuery. All right, you can check and see if something has a check state, if it's been selected, if it has the focus, if it's enabled or not, or if it's disabled or not. All right, we're going to look at all of this stuff. There are visibility selectors. check whether something is visible or hidden. There are filter selectors. We've looked at some of this stuff. This gets to be a little bit confusing because some of the stuff in here is 0 based and some of the stuff in here is 1 based. You know, again, as the saying goes, I didn't make the rules, I'm just playing the game. All right? So for example, if we say tr even, selects all tr elements and then filters the results down only to the even numbered elements. And I believe those start with 0. Odd would be the opposite. First, this selects only the first div element that it encounters. Only the last div element that it encounters. All header elements. The 6th encountered div, because we're starting to count with 0. Every li element after the second one, because remember 0, 1. Every li element before the second one. All right, so element 0 and element 1. Select elements that are being animated. So you see all this different stuff that you're able to do. This is going to be an interesting class to teach with this book. This is either going to be one of the better books I've ever gotten for a class or one of the worst books I've ever gotten for a class. But it will really and truly be necessary for everyone in both classes to read the chapter before we go over material. All right. So in these examples, they're similar to the last ones, except what we're doing in these examples is we're using jQuery instead of JavaScript as we used before. So if we take a look at those examples, so let's open up this. And this. And this. All right, same stuff that you see in the book, same source code that's in the book on pages 214 and 215. And let's run it. That's always the best way to figure out what's going on anyway. Even. All right, notice 0, 2, 4, 6. Odd. 1, 3, 5, 7. First 4. 0, 1, 2, 3. Now that should make sense to everyone in this class, in either class. Notice we're calling set even, set odd, or set first 4 on this list. Okay? And if we look, there's the span, and we're just doing a little bit of fairly simplistic CSS, but let's look at this file. Not that one. All right, so we've got 3 different functions in here. And what we're doing for the set even is we're saying for every li and every span, turn off the font weight. Don't set it to anything. All right, so the first thing we're doing is we're making sure in all of these, whatever we turned on for the previous one, we turn back off. So we're doing the same thing at the beginning of each one of these. All right. Then our even items, remember that's 0, 2, 4, and 6. We're setting to even items. Our odd items we're setting to 1, 3, 5, and 7. And here, the first 4, we're setting to 0, 1, 2, and 3. Then we say for those even items, or for those odd items, or for those first four, add CSS to make them bold. All right, so we're doing that for both the items themselves, the list items, and the spans. And we're making sure the label either says even or odd or first four. So one more time, if we run this again, I guess we're not going to run that. There it is. Notice how this changes. It says planets here. When we click even, it says even, odd, or first four. All right? And we're doing all of that dynamically based on this. So this is that label that says either even or odd or first four. Okay. Hopefully this is helping. All right, and that's pretty much it for this particular chapter. So next we'll go into Chapter 8 on navigating and manipulating jQuery objects and DOM elements with jQuery. Be back with that one shortly.